Hey there folks, this is Rob Woods and welcome to episode 13 of the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. This is the show for anyone who works in charity fundraising and who wants ideas and inspiration for how to enjoy their job, raise more money and make a bigger difference. And on this episode, if you work in major gifts or trusts or mid-level donor fundraising and you'd like some ideas to help you develop better relationships that will lead to increased income for your charity, then we've got just the episode for you. Because today I'm talking to the brilliant Lynda Harwood-Compton, who's a major donor fundraiser at Animals Asia. Last year, Lynda took part in Bright Spot's Major Gifts Mastery Programme, and so benefited from the training days, the coaching calls, and access to all the online training and events as part of the Bright Spot Members Club. I bumped into Lynda the other day at a conference, and she told me she was having an amazing year and loving her job more than ever, not least because of the staggering results she's been getting. Put simply, this is her first year in major donor fundraising and she's exceeded her target by 44%. That's an extra £305,000 raised for her cause. And crucially, I was really interested to hear some of the shrewd distinctions and tactics she's been using to generate those results. In this episode, we cover a range of ideas Lynda feels have helped her create such warm relationships with her supporters, including how she uses webinars to inform and inspire high-value donors, how she includes more real examples in all her conversations, her willingness to make small changes. She even customized her business card to make it easier to tell inspiring stories. So let's get started. Here I am asking Lynda about her results.
So my budget for this year was $595,000 and we're just finishing up for Christmas and I will be bringing in about £900,000 this year, which is amazing.
This episode of the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast is brought to you by the Bright Spot Members Club. As a practical alternative to one-off conferences and courses whose impact can fade all too quickly, the Members Club is an online resource that gives you ongoing access to a whole library of video training courses, monthly coaching webinars and live training events. It's all designed to help you learn, enjoy your job and raise more money. To join the 300 fundraisers already in the club, or just to find out more, go to brightspotfundraising.co.uk.
So, hi Lynda Harwood, welcome to the interview.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Huge congratulations. That's really takes some doing. That wasn't just one big gift, it was one piece of luck. I sense there's a confidence and a momentum about how you go about your job, and you were kind enough the other day to say that some of those key things were things you've practiced ever since the mastery program. So in terms of the content, either you got from Charlie the coach or from me in the training days, do you want to start with one of the key ideas that you feel you've got more successful at that's helped with those results?
I think first and foremost, it's all about knowing your donor, and I learned that from day one on the course. And I don't mean just from a fundraising perspective to be able to match them to a specific project. I mean knowing them personally as well and really sort of appreciating and understanding their world. Because it just brings that personable relationship. It's not a transactional relationship. You're able to connect with them, keep that relationship going. And, it could be anything from having something in common, such as running or a local football team. But for me, I really made sure this year I know everything about my donors. I know their children, I know when their birthdays are, I'll check up if I know they've been on holiday, I'll drop them a little note, see how their holidays have been. And I think it's also really about building that relationship and making them feel valued and valuable. So if I have anything like that I need some advice on, maybe we're looking at setting up a new fundraising project, I will go to them for feedback and just make sure that they know they're really part of the Animals Asia family. And I suppose something else that I learned really early on was that people absolutely buy feelings and identity. And I think that's something that we do so well at Animals Asia. We have this real family element. And I remember one of the things you said to me was, when you have your business cards, why don't you get a picture of your favourite bear on it? a good talking point. It makes it more personal to the donor. They've got a connection. And I went away and did that, and I picked my little favourite bear, who's a sun bear called Anne-Marie, and she's on my business card. And again, whenever I hand out my business card, I introduce myself and Anne-Marie as well, and it really does bring that relationship. And I think one of the other things that makes me laugh is because I came from this sort of corporate fundraising, suited and booted world, I was very much, very professional and very much, yours sincerely and best wishes. And when I joined Animals Asia, they encouraged me. They said, this is a family, and, we want you to sign off with, bear hugs. Bear hugs, we are a family. And at the start, I thought, oh God, I'm not used to this. This isn't what I'm used to at all. And I kid you not, Rob, within a couple of days, bear hugs, it just felt so natural. And that's just the ethos of the charity. And it feels weird now not to sign off bear hugs.
Yeah, and certainly I've worked with several of your colleagues, and that's a key theme I've always got, that this family ethos comes through really strongly and authentically in your culture, and surprise, that makes it easier for you to be more informal and personal in the way you communicate to your supporters. So surprise, those relationships do become more warm and natural. So I love that. In terms of, is there a particular gift or particular supporter journey you can think of as an example of you working more in this way?
Yeah, and I think it leads on to something else that I learned at your training course, which was never underestimate lapsed donors, or actually never underestimate a stewardship meeting either. And the example I'd like to give is a donor who, before my time, probably about 2015, gave a very large gift and said, that's it, that's my final gift to Animals Asia, thank you very much, which is absolutely fine. But I kept the stewardship going, any little information that was happening, I would send it her way, kept her in touch, even if it's just simple things like newsletters or a little bit of insider information. And she got back in touch in the summer and said, look, I've been reading what you've been doing, I actually now want to give one final gift this time, and we spoke about it over the summer, discussed how much she wanted to give, why, where to, and I'm very pleased to say that she ended up giving a £100,000 gift to us, which was just incredible. So never ever underestimate lapsed donors.
That's wonderful and so generous. Congratulations in just doing those small things right. So we've covered two or three themes so far. Is there another particular idea or theme or example that springs to mind from your last few months of success that brings it to life?
Yeah, there's a couple. One of the ones I wanted to mention was also about connecting frontline staff with our donors, and it's a little bit tricky for us because our work is in Asia and we're obviously based in the UK, so I can't often take people to the programme sites. But after talking it through in the course, I did a few things to really bring our programmes to life. So I set up WhatsApp groups with people, with donors and the frontline staff. I set up a webinar this year with our director of the Bear Sanctuary in Vietnam for our mids and major donors, and that was incredible. It gave people the real inside scoop. They were able to speak face to face with the director, but they were also able to ask their questions as well. So it was used more of a stewardship tool rather than fundraising, but it was so successful. I'm going to run another 4 next year, 1 per quarter. And I also had my first VIP trip this year. So we took 5 donors to Vietnam and China, and I was luckily able to go as well. And that was really bringing the donors face to face with our work.
That's so exciting. And at some level, just being able to connect people to the experience, to the work itself, does its job, doesn't it? But if you were to tell me a couple of things you specifically tried hard to do before that trip or on that trip to maximise the chances that those donors would have an exciting and potentially inspiring time. They might be obvious things, but you managed to absolutely deliver on them and follow through on those principles. What were your guiding principles as you put that trip together?
Yeah, so I didn't know any of the donors beforehand. So the first thing was it was important for me to get to know them. So if I wasn't able to meet them face to face, we had phone conversations, we had a little email group. I also thought it was important for the donors to get to know each other as well. So I set up a group WhatsApp. So we were communicating months beforehand. The trip was in April time. So by actually this time last year, the WhatsApp group was set up. We had our email communications. Everyone had trust in me because they knew exactly the itinerary. I mean, if it's one thing that I am, it's organised. So they were in good hands. So already they felt safe and comfortable with me. And just showing that sort of like influence. You spoke about influence a lot, and really showing that gravitas and that you're in control, and this is an important trip that we're going to make it extra special for you, and I'll be there for you to trust that everything will go well. And the follow up to that as well actually is that we still have our WhatsApp group. We met last week actually. We normally meet once a quarter now, so this is 2 quarters in, so we've met twice. We do a catch up. I'm also luckily enough we've got our captive animal welfare director based in the UK. So last week I organised for him to come down and meet us in London as well and give a sort of like insider of what's going to be happening next year. And we'll continue that relationship now, even if they never donate to Animals Asia again or they never attend a trip. We now have that special bond as donors, and I'll continue that.
Yeah, fantastic. So a couple of follow-up questions I've got. One of them is, I sense you're making lots of use of WhatsApp. Does that mean you've got various different WhatsApp groups for different bits of your Animals Asia workload, and you just manage to keep on top of each of those as and when appropriate? Or do you have any tips on how you manage to keep on top of all these different chunks of stewardship style communication?
Yeah, I have different groups for WhatsApp because I just think it makes it more personal as well, and different people are funding different projects. So I would say that what I'm finding with a lot of my donors is they love text and WhatsApp communication. I'd maybe say that's number one, then email, then face-to-face and phone. And to be honest, a WhatsApp message takes 15 seconds to put together, and it's really easy to keep on top of it as well. And the thing is, it's not just me that's managing the group. You've got the people over in Asia who are so good at sending updates and pictures and videos. In a way, it starts to just run itself. It's not me running it at all. It's just like a WhatsApp group where everyone's contributing. So I would really highly recommend that for other major gifts managers.
Thank you. And then a follow-up question. You mentioned earlier the webinar you'd set up. As an example, how many people did you get attending each of those webinars? And could you give us a couple of your tips or principles as you've managed to put together these 4 webinars for the next year? Anything you've learned or anything you're trying to do to make all the effort that's involved, especially for your colleague who's in service delivery, to make it really maximized because people are showing up for the webinar rather than your colleague over there having to do the webinar and only one person here attending?
Yeah, so for this webinar that we had in September, because it was the first one, I almost wanted to pilot it. So it was a very small group. It was only about 30 people on it. We can have a maximum of 100. And what I did is I wanted to make it as easy as possible for Heidi, who's in Vietnam. So I just asked if she could prepare a presentation for 60 minutes about a day in the life or a week in the life of the Vietnam Rescue Centre, because that's what people really want to know. A lot of our donors, 95% of them, will never visit the sanctuary, and I know that insider information is so valuable for them. So setting up the webinar, we had the sort of like rules beforehand so that everyone knew that they would be muted for the first hour so that Heidi could speak and there would be no interruptions, because there's nothing worse on a webinar or a Skype call where it's back and forth. So we had 60 minutes where everyone was muted, but what they could do is they could have there was a Q&A box. So as they had a question that popped up, they could type in their Q&A, and I had my trust fundraiser on, managing that at the same time. And then once Heidi had finished speaking after an hour, we went through the questions. So 5 people had asked the same question. That was obviously the first question that was answered. And we had half an hour of going through the questions. And I was very aware that, this was during the day. This could have been people's lunch times. We had 90 minutes and we had to finish on that time. So if any questions were left unanswered and we didn't have time, I took them away. We got an answer from Heidi, and then I relayed it back to the donor. And everyone was happy. It was a real success. It worked really well.
So it's so successful that you've got to go ahead to quite deliberately do lots more of these, and to make this a key part of the stewardship offering to people who are supporting your charity. So that's congratulations on the success of it. 2 questions. One, I presume that you sensed, apart from being really interesting and inspiring, it was helping the supporters belong and care and potentially want to be more generous. And then my other question is just really practically, was it relatively easy to get people signing up, or did you have to communicate quite regularly to get people signing up to the webinar?
So what I'd set up 2 emails and then 2 reminders. So what I did was, so it was due for mid-September. So end of June, I sent out the first email with the registration link to explain to people to sign up. Then about a month later, I sent out the second one just as a reminder, because I was aware it was over summer holiday time and people might not be checking emails quite as regularly. But I must admit, the first email had the best response. Most people signed up straight away. And then we had 2 reminders. So just to let them know a week beforehand that the webinar was going ahead, and then a day beforehand to remember to do things like install Zoom, be ready to start at 1 p.m, how long it would last for, and the format as well. So everyone was well informed about what would be happening.
Yes, and I don't know if it was possible to measure how interesting and valuable they found it, or whether there was any measurement of how that has affected giving levels since.
So I was actually going to do a survey afterwards to see what the reaction was, but to be honest, I didn't have to, because 90% of the people emailed me personally to just say thank you so much for doing this, and it was so valuable for us. There wasn't really a specific fundraising ask, so I can't really measure that at the minute, but that is something I'm looking to do in the future.
So I love this specific tactic, and I hope there's many listeners, even if they are just UK based, so there's not a massive geographical reason to do this, but nevertheless you managed to get more people showing up for the webinar than we would necessarily get showing up for a project visit, whether in the UK or abroad. So I think it's a fabulous tactic. Thank you for explaining it. And then if we were to move on to, I know you mentioned the other day 2 or 3 other really interesting successes you've had, and I wonder if, could you tell me about 1 or 2 more of those, and indeed 1 or 2 more of the key principles from the Major Gifts Mastery Programme that you found have helped?
Sure. So I think a big one for me is storytelling and the influence that storytelling has. And I must admit, I went away and I literally did a session about storytelling for all the UK staff in Animals Asia. And you do a really great exercise about telling a story, and then you got to get it into 6 bullet points, 3 bullet points, 1 bullet point. And you could see their face when they were having to tell a story in 1 sentence. But the results were amazing. You think you can't do it, and the stories, we've actually collected a little story bank now that we're going to add to. So storytelling really has been a big one for me. And a couple of examples how it's worked was we had a little bear called Aurora that was rescued, and it was, again, super sad story, but we're not pulling on the heartstrings as in, like emotional blackmail or anything. It's just telling the story how it is. And I told this story to a mid-level donor, and she was just absolutely blown away by it. Used the techniques that you had shared, and again, she really just linked in with Aurora and wanted to help her and her little friends in the den. And she's another donor that's now moved from a mid-level donor to a major donor.
It's so interesting, isn't it? How if we've worked in a charity for a little while, we can forget and underestimate the power of knowing the specifics, which very often we in the charity do know these specific examples, but because we've heard it 3 times before, we become a little just not quite appreciating just how strong and fascinating and powerful these concrete examples is. So when we're more proactive than we naturally might be to share those, it's 20 times more valuable than us talking about the mission statement or whatever. So congratulations for being so confident in sharing those real examples. So there's so many great principles you've talked about so far, Lynda. That last one was storytelling and sharing real examples. Is there anything else that you found interesting from the program that you weren't necessarily doing at that level, but now the program helped you to deliberately do more of something?
Yeah, there's two other elements that really stick out for me. The first one is the magic formula, talking about the problem and impact. I wouldn't say too much about it because people should go on the course to learn about it. But I just remember you always gave this analogy of think about the horse and the cart. So the horse is the problem and why we're doing what we're doing. And the cart was the how. How do we solve it? And how do we show that, for me, Animals Asia are the best at solving this problem? And I think before I attended your course, I was swapping the horse and cart round the other way. So that was a real big moment for me, and I still use that to this day. And of course you can incorporate your storytelling into it. And the last thing that really hit home for me was you spoke a lot about influence and breaking the seal when you go in for meetings. And I had an example of this actually a couple of months ago where I was going into a couple of major donor meetings with the CEO. The relationship very much with the CEO. I didn't know these people at all, not really even had email conversations or phone conversations with them. So I knew I had to really show gravitas and influence, and I wanted to take these relationships over. So you always said if you were going into a meeting and you wanted to break the seal, that to plan your point before you go in and say it as soon as you get into the meeting to show you've got presence and really can add gravitas and value. And I did exactly that in the meeting, and it was so successful. I mean, I can now say that I absolutely hold those relationships now. I think also as well, like really believing in yourself as well. You're the expert in the fundraising field here, and these relationships are going to be best suited with you. And that was a real thumbs up for me. I was so pleased after that meeting to really have those relationships, and some of them were actually lapsed, and I can now say that I'm stewarding them, and they're no longer lapsed. They've now given, and hopefully will continue to give over the coming years.
Yeah, well, congratulations on managing to do that, Lynda, because it's not easy because of our own psychological reasons and little voice. And even if all of that is fine, the number of signals that we as a fundraiser can be sent by society or by those within our charity, that where we are in the pecking order compared to some of these extremely important and or high status and or wealthy people, it's not easy to go into the meeting feeling on an equal and willing and able to be proactive and own the space in that way. But of course, if we are to help a donor give to something they care about, at some level, they do need to see us on a level rather than look down on us. Congratulations on managing to make it work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynda. And I know you've got this time of year as busy as ever. You've got other things to do. So a huge thank you for giving up your time to share some of these examples and stories and principles of what's been working so well for you this year. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
You've just been listening to ideas and examples that Lynda Harwood-Compton has been using to generate a fabulous uplift in major donor and mid-level donor income for her charity Animals Asia. Apart from anything else, I found Lynda's positive, creative approach to all her relationships and how she pays attention to the small things really inspiring. Not least because she's proof that doing these manageable steps does make a big difference to your overall results. If you'd like to see a summary of these ideas, do check out the episode notes on our Bright Spot fundraising website. And if you're curious to get access to the key fundraising strategies that Lynda benefited from, you can do that by joining the Bright Spot Members Club, which is a kind of Netflix for fundraisers. There are lots of training films and downloads, full of examples and guidance, as well as regular problem solving and coaching sessions by webinar, and our special Bright Spot Live full-day events which happen in London. To find out more, go to brightspotmembersclub.com/join. If you found today's episode helpful, please do leave us a review and share with other fundraisers you know so that these sessions can reach and help more and more charities to make a bigger difference. Finally, and most importantly, thank you so much for making time for your own professional development by tuning in to listen to this podcast. I look forward to the next episode when we'll be sharing more ideas and bright spot stories to help you raise more money, enjoy your job, and make a bigger difference.